What's up, guys? I got to play with my brother's brand new 2024 Land Cruiser all weekend, and I've got some pretty good feedback on it for you guys. I'm going to do 3 videos, maybe 4. This video is going to be all underneath the truck, looking at the protection and the design changes. The next video is going to be interior and engine bay, and then the last video is going to be some 0 to 60 pulls and some off-roading. We did some mild off-roading near Big Bear Lake. But yeah, super awesome platform. Definitely going to get something with this new platform at some point. Probably not the Land Cruiser, because I don't like the rear AC and I don't like the hybrid system. We'll get into that in the other videos. But really like this truck. So to give you some background on me, I've had an 80 series Land Cruiser for a long time. Actually an 88 4Runner too, and then I had a GX470. Currently drive a GX460, and I've been modding them. And you know, my 460 is pretty well armored, front locker, whole 9 yards. So I've got some experience with the older Prado platforms, and I'm really excited to play with the new one. A couple things I really like right off the bat is that they tucked everything up better into the frame. The differential sits higher in the frame, the differential mounts don't hang down, the exhaust is tucked up higher around the transfer case, stuff like that. What I don't like is that this is the Land Cruiser, it's supposed to be very off-roady, right? The skid plate protection in the front for the radiator and condenser is absolutely pathetic. The skid plates in general are pretty pathetic. Of course, no front locker, pathetic. So yeah, I'll show you the video and I'll give you some more details throughout. Alright guys, finally get to play with the new 2024 Land Cruiser. This is my brother's, and I'm pretty excited to mess with it. So this is basically the new Prado platform from Toyota, except that it's pretty big. So we're going to be doing some off-roading this weekend, doing some camping out of it, and I'm going to do a bunch of review videos and try to give you some honest feedback on this thing. I haven't seen a whole lot of good YouTube videos that were really honest, because everyone's so excited about it. Alright, so naturally I'm laying on the ground underneath the truck. It's a brand new truck, so it's super clean down here. Very large exhaust system. There's the transfer case with a big electric controller that is not super well shielded at all. A sticker or rock could easily take out this transfer case actuator. Kind of like how my GX was from the factory. So that's kind of sad. There's the giant 8-speed transmission this thing has. Does have a steel oil pan, unlike a lot of other vehicles these days, but this is a very tall transmission engine. Some water is dripped into my eye from the AC system, because that's your drain right there for your front evaporator, so maybe there'll be a rear one too. But yeah, let's get a little farther underneath here. Thing I want to see underneath here, of course, is this. This is the sway bar disconnect module. So it's got a real big, beefy front sway bar that you can completely disconnect. And I think that is far superior to what my truck has, my GX460 with the KDSS. So I'm pretty excited about that. That is pretty cool. The front drive shaft. Toyota did maintain greasable universal joints. Love to see that. And of course this vehicle is all-wheel drive, so there's your front drive shaft. It is still greasable. See all this space up here that I'm talking about? So there is a lot of airflow that comes through here. That's really nice to see. Even though this transmission is an absolute monstrosity, there is a good amount of airflow. Now, one thing you don't see down here is a starter. And you don't see the starter because there isn't one, because it uses the hybrid motor to do that job as well. So that hybrid motor is your alternator, your starter, and your hybrid motor, which is pretty cool. It's like an RTV. It's kind of weird. It looks a little goofy, doesn't it? Huh. Big aluminum knuckles, that's new. The control arms are very long. And the CV joints are roughly straight right now, so this thing could definitely be lifted up a little bit and not have any CV binding issues. That's cool. As far as skid plates go, this is all plastic. Pretty chintzy, pretty unsupported. I wonder if that's the rattle he has. He has a rattle, and that could totally be it. Yeah, that's goofy. It does have this pretty thin steel skid plate for your sway bar disconnect module, but this skid plate is real chintzy. Gas tank has a steel skid plate, but again, not very well supported. and it doesn't cover the whole length of the tank, so it's plastic back there, and then it has the steel right here. So like my GX460, the whole gas tank isn't protected by steel. And the rear drive shaft has this accordion boot over the slip. That's new, but you still got a greasable grease zerk in there. Love to see that, of course. What are these hoses right here? That's some kind of a coolant hose for what? Oh, I think that's for the rear heat. Yeah, so here, that's your rear heat, and then here's your rear AC lines. Now, I wish this truck did not have rear AC. That's a lot of extra complication and hoses routed everywhere for something you don't really need, because there's no third row. So why does it have rear AC? Maybe it'll be nice for camping. I don't know. I think Toyota's kind of missed the mark with that. Yeah, this skid plate is real thin. That is not excellent. I mean, that is super thin and chintzy. That is thinner than what came on my GX460, to be honest. Exhaust hangs down pretty low, so this is going to get dented up probably this weekend. It does have this little tiny skid plate on the bottom of the transfer case that bolts to the transfer case itself. It does hang down kind of low. One thing that's an improvement over most Toyotas is that the exhaust doesn't hang down beneath the transfer case. It kind of comes down behind it. So that's interesting. The exhaust kind of comes behind the transfer case and then goes under the drive shaft. Whereas on all my Toyotas, the exhaust would be right here underneath the front drive shaft, and it would hang down a little bit. So I guess they kept the exhaust tucked up a little better, which is pretty cool. This crossmember is removable. Feels a little thinner than mine. There's your transfer case mount. Okay. A lot of this weird stuff put on the seams. Looks almost like it's kind of peeling off. It's almost like a felt material. Pretty interesting. A lot of sound deadening on this truck though, which it does sound pretty premium on the inside. All right, let's get back here. So we got conventional sway bar, kind of a small sway bar going all the way across, and then up over the pumpkin. That looks a lot like every other Toyota. The suspension in the rear is pretty similar. These upper links though are really beefy compared to the old 4Runners and my GX460. That's nice. That's a really beefy link there. Really big bushings, so that's cool. The exhaust kind of tucks up over the same way. This rear axle looks different though. The way that it's shaped and welded and everything like that, like the shape of the housing actually looks different. It looks very beefy. This does have a smaller rear end than the GX550. It's only rated to tow 6,000 pounds, so kind of a limited towing capacity. As far as the bump stops, it's got a hard bump stop up here on the frame rail, and then it's also got a softer bump stop inside the spring. That's pretty similar to what I'm used to seeing on my Lexus vehicles. And of course, it's an all passive suspension. There's no active dampening and no ride height control, which is great. Screw all that. Yeah, real big beefy suspension links. I don't think these hang down, the mounts hang down quite as far as my GX, but obviously this is going to be a point that's going to get all bent up. It's this right here. And of course, it's pretty thin. This thing is just pathetic. Look at the crazy shape of this gas tank too. It's got like this big cutout in here. I don't know, it's like an anti-slosh feature. I don't know what they were doing with that, but it's a crazy looking gas tank. At the back of the truck now, very large exhaust, and it is cut to keep it from getting caught on stuff and pinched. Way bigger exhaust than my V8, right? But it's a turbo, so you gotta have a good flowing exhaust, so that kind of makes sense. Big old spare, big full-size spare back here on an alloy wheel, and it hangs down pretty far. Kind of wish this wasn't here. Here's your rear recovery point tied into your hitch support, and then there's your panhard bar going across. Of course, the spare's in the way. Big ass back axle, and the shocks hang down pretty far, really far. You got electric parking brake on here now. Pretty beefy. But I think they definitely could have maximized clearance better. And it's a Land Cruiser, so I really wish this spare was on the back door or somewhere else. So it comes on 265s, which is a pretty big tire, but look how much space there is around it. So that's a huge improvement over my GX460. Is just the tire clearance is massive. It's going to be a lot easier to put 35s on this thing, I think, than the struggle I've been having with just 34s. All right, so up under the passenger side of the vehicle, you got your exhaust system there. Right after the turbo, you got your giant catalytic converter. There's the cooling for the transmission cooler lines right there. It's got a little weird front oil pan here. Oh, that's the electric motor housing actually. So it's transmission, electric motor, and then engine up there. That's why that looks weird to me. Interesting. But yeah, very cool. So if you look at it from this angle right here, you see that that exhaust is going to get absolutely abused. That's going to get dented up very quickly, the muffler. And the frame is huge, really tall frame. It does have some nice welded inserts here that'll probably come in handy for adding rock sliders at some point. These factory steps are the extruded aluminum, you know, bolt to the body variety, and those will probably get beat up this weekend too, if I had to guess. Yeah, really big shocks, really big twin tube shocks. Japan. Very beefy though, like really big hardware on the shocks, really big nuts on top. Pretty neat. One thing I'm seeing down here is that this is metal. So you got a little bit of metal protection here. You don't have the sway bar. The sway bar is up front, so you actually keep a better profile right here. All this clearance right here is extra. My truck comes forward then up because of the front sway bar. But all of this is very thin plastic. You do have the big aluminum crash bar in here that would prevent some rock damage, but this is plastic, very thin plastic. This is plastic. And then you got a little bit of thin steel here underneath the radiator support. But then it turns to plastic right here. So yeah, does not have amazing protection whatsoever from the factory, so it's going to need some front skid plates for rock bashing. These things look like they come off pretty easy, and they're going to have to come off because this hangs down way too far. It is kind of a soft, flexible rubber, so you know it'll take some hits, but yeah, I don't love that. I would expect better protection for as off-roady as this thing is supposed to be, and it's just not there. It's not protected any better than the older 4Runners or the GX460. So that's disappointing. This is really thin. I mean, yeah. This is all very chintzy. Come on, Toyota. So here's your factory Toyota skid plate. I was really hoping there was some other protection underneath this. It's, you know, your standard really thin skid plate, but there's no bars behind it. There's the damage it took from our first outing. It bolts in a couple different places, but yeah, not real impressed with the protection on this Land Cruiser. All right, so we pulled the factory really flimsy skid plate off of this 2024 Land Cruiser to try to look at what kind of radiator protection there is, and the answer is that there's not much. So this is your radiator support protection bar right here. You can see it's welded to the frame, but it's not fully boxed in all the way to the frame, and it's really puny. And the radiator hangs down all the way to right here. So it wouldn't take much for a rock to destroy the radiator and the condenser on this truck. On most other Toyotas, like my GX, you have bars that come from here up to here that kind of really nicely stiffen up this radiator support, and the radiator support is bigger. This is really flimsy stuff, so I think we're gonna have to have a skid plate that ties into your toe points here and goes all the way across to beef all this up, and then ties into this bar down here that supports your suspension. All the suspension mounts and everything look really good. Oh, here comes the Badlands Badass Jack. This all looks really beefed up, but the front of the truck is really puny. As far as like hitting a rock here, you could destroy this radiator and condenser really easy. So there's what it looks like at full down travel. This thing has a lot of down travel, and you can see that that angle isn't very bad. at full down travel. This tire's off the ground. So you could definitely lift this thing a good bit. There's a little tiny bump stop, by the way. Yeah, this thing's definitely gonna have some extra travel to give the lift kit, I suspect. That's the upper control arm at full down travel. Angles are not bad at all. So I think the aftermarket industry will be able to make some shocks and improve the travel on the front of this truck even more. That's awesome. So look at this Land Cruiser differential. It hangs down not very far. The suspension beam behind it hangs down much farther than the diff. So your skid plate doesn't need to protect the diff very much. You got to protect. This is the thing that's lacking protection. This right here. This is what scares me. Everything else looks fine. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, the diff and the drive shaft are pretty high up. So if you watch Tinker's Adventure YouTube channel, which you absolutely should, he pointed out the GX550 Overtrail Edition had double offset CV joints. This truck is missing that. It's also missing any kind of skid plate options or knobby tires, a lot of stuff like that. So definitely get some cheaper vibes from the from this new Land Cruiser. I know they're trying to save money, but come on guys, like that's important stuff. Also, the rear locker looks different. It's not like an exterior servo actuator anymore. It looks like it's got maybe like a magnet type, I don't know, E-locker inside the third member where it's not like an external servo. So that's kind of cool. Just a few observations there. Let me know what you guys think about the truck in the comments below.